I just wanted to hop on real quick to do a flash live, if there's such a thing. Um, I know you guys are probably in a similar situation to me, which is gathering all of the information you can about Biogen's new drug. And so I just wanted to share what my thoughts have been based on the sources that I look at for information. And I will actually include their names in this description so you can go ahead and check out what they're saying. So I've read both the, pros, this is so great, and then I've also read the cons of what the hesitations are or the red flags. And so I wanted to share with you guys kind of what my thought process is. And while my dad has already passed away, he passed away 2 Januaries ago, I find myself kind of thinking like, what would I have done, you know, 8 years ago when he was still here and after he got the diagnosis, the MCI diagnosis, which is, as we know, mild cognitive impairment. And that's really what this drug, the trials have, those are the type of patients that Biogen has worked with for this drug, is people that have mild cognitive impairment or very mild dementia symptoms, or diagnosis of mild dementia. So I'm conflicted, quite honestly, but I do have a recommendation. And by the way, this brings me to the point that I am not a doctor, and so my opinion is not a medical opinion. Definitely check with your doctor. This is just really me sharing my thoughts. So I think that it is good that we are getting FDA to recognize that this is a big issue, that maybe there needs to be looking at different kinds of research. I think it's a good idea that, FDA did give approval to Biogen's drug, in the sense that they can give approval to a drug for dementia, because the last time they did that, I think, was like 20 years ago. But the way that this drug got approval, it was kind of pushed on the fast track, and FDA did do this themselves, but it was put on a fast track. So basically, the summary is that they did 2 studies on Aducanumab, which is going to be marketed as ADUHELM, and I'll put the names of these things in the description. But basically, the first study that was done, they didn't find a significant difference in the what they claim to do is slow the mild cognitive impairment or the early stage symptoms of dementia, specifically Alzheimer's. And so when this was found, they actually closed down the trials that Biogen was doing, because they saw that their futility test, basically seeing, is this a significant difference or not? And if not, then like, why are we continuing to do this, right? Basically, when they looked into it after they shut down the trials, they said, oh, well, actually, there was a significant difference in this other study that we're doing with, a couple of other people that we didn't include in the original data. Who knows why? I think it wasn't available yet. And so then they continued the trials and they wanted FDA to reconsider, approving it, basically. And so that's where we are now. And so FDA did approve it. They also put them on the fast track, meaning that Biogen was able to skip a phase of the trial run because FDA gave the approval. And so there's really this question of, is this really statistically significant, this difference? Does this drug really work for people? And so what FDA is saying is that while they are going to start letting Biogen market the ADUHELM, or the Aducanumab, is the original name of the drug, that they are actually going to be doing a study while it's given to people who are eligible for it, to basically come up with an outcome that causes it to be statistically significant. So really, like, the first study said, no, it's not significant. The second study said, yes, it is significant. So everyone's like, okay, so what is it, right? And so as a result of this, there are three people in the advisory board for FDA who actually quit the advisory board because they don't agree with where FDA is going. Because this is important. The advisory board, while FDA said, okay, Biogen, go ahead, we're approving you, the advisory board, the majority of people said no. Like, we need the data to show that this drug actually does help people with dementia. And so I have a couple of theories as to why FDA approved it. I think there's a lot of pressure socially and politically for us to find, if not a cure for dementia, at least a treatment that's better than Aricept or Namenda, which is what we have right now. And this one is, they're saying that it will slow dementia only in the early stages. So one of the issues with this idea of Aduhelm being marketed and being accessible to everyone who's eligible for it is that they are marketing the Aduhelm for everyone with dementia, regardless of what stage of dementia you're in. So you see a lot of doctors, neurologists really pushing kind of like, well, I don't know if that's correct to do, right? Because the trials were only done on people who have mild cognitive impairment or early stage dementia. And so the way that this drug works is that it really they claim to get rid of the amyloid plaque. So if you're familiar with dementia, one of the markers, the biomarkers of someone having dementia is all of this extra amyloid plaque and also the tau protein tangles. And so, this Biogen is under the impression, and this is kind of a lot of people in research have been doing this more recently, is like, oh, well, if we get rid of these amyloid plaques, which we see in pretty much everyone that has dementia, then the person won't have dementia symptoms anymore, right? But we don't know if that's necessarily true. There are some people that think that the amyloid plaques are actually like a result of the dementia symptoms, right? And so that's kind of the thought for some people on the Biogen drug, which is like, yeah, okay, well, you remove the amyloid, but how does that guarantee that it slows the dementia, right? Is it a cause of dementia or is it an effect of dementia? No one really knows. And so that's why I think it's really surprising to me and also a little scary that Biogen is able to market this drug to anyone who quote unquote needs it, and while I don't know exactly what the eligibility requirements are. They're going to try to make it available with like Medicare discounting it, Medicaid discounting it. CVS has already said that they want to partner and having cognitive tests for people and just, for people to assess their brain health. And then if they want to, they can go to their doctor and then they get referred to a neurologist. They get the MRI and that type of scan to see if they are eligible for this treatment. But, I shared my comments with National Public Radio. I just called in and because they wanted to hear from caregivers. And I basically said, at 66, my dad was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment. And as far as I know, what I know right now about the eligibility, he probably would have been eligible. And so I sent my mom a message, like, when all of this stuff was coming out. And I said, would we have done this? Because it's estimated to be up to $56,000 a year, anywhere from like maybe $20,000 with, insurance covering it or Medicare covering it, maybe. This is just a guess. But all the way up to $56,000 a year, and it's infusions into your blood. And so, it's really, really expensive. And so I kind of asked my mom, and my mom said, well, maybe we could like sell dad's car or something. But she's like, I wouldn't want to try something if we don't know that if we not sure that it works, right? And I agree with her. I think that I wouldn't want to try this also because being in the field, the dementia field that I'm in, I've heard so many studies and so much research being done on like changing your lifestyle and how much that can have an effect on mild cognitive impairment. And I've actually read cases where, some researchers have found that it can actually reverse mild cognitive impairment. Lifestyle changes such as exercising on a regular basis, getting good quality sleep. And what I mean by good quality is like 7 to 8 hours of sleep, and making sure that that the person doesn't have sleep apnea. So I have sleep apnea. I know that I'm not getting as much oxygen that I need to get to my brain at night. So I'm actually making changes about that. But that's important. And then finally, changing over to Mediterranean diet. So much research is showing that diet is everything. If you can stay away from red meats, even chicken, stick to fish and nuts and vegetables, that's the way. So I think this is a much better solution, and people have found this in research that it has either reversed the mild cognitive impairment or it has slowed dementia. So it's like, why aren't we looking at these as solutions instead of sort of a band-aid of this drug that can actually cause side effects? So this is something else that I brought up with National Public Radio, also known as NPR here in DC, is like the risky side effect of this drug is that it can swell the person's brain, which can also lead to brain bleeding, which, guess what? The brain bleeding can lead to memory loss, right? So it's like not giving, I kind of said this as a perspective where, like, if I'm giving my parent this drug and I'm not giving them a chance to change their lifestyle, or, you're basically you're possibly setting your parent up to have memory issues, to go into having dementia without even trying these other preventive measures first, or even these slowing measures that have been shown by even more research to actually reverse the mild cognitive impairment or to slow the dementia. And, I know this from my dad's experience, is like, he was always in great shape, but he was always eating cake and sweets, right? I think that's the case with a lot of our parents from that generation. Like, they grew up on processed food, they grew up on sugar, and we're seeing the effects of that now. We're seeing diabetes, we're seeing high blood pressure, we're seeing heart issues, we're seeing stroke, we're seeing cancer, we're seeing dementia. And I've mentioned this before, but one of my other videos, but there's a lot of cutting edge research showing now that inflammation in your body is connected to the onset of cancer, the onset of dementia. All of these are kind of like autoimmune diseases, right? It's sort of like your body turning against itself. And what would cause it to do that, right? So there's a thought about this inflammation, which is why exercise is recommended, which is why I think it's called the Mind diet is recommended. That's the Mediterranean diet I told you about. And also sleep, because during sleep, all of the toxins are cleaned out of our brain, including, some of the plaques, right? So it's really important to get good quality sleep as well. And that can actually lessen swelling too. So that's sort of my take. I think that it's like way too much, way too soon. I appreciate that Biogen is trying to make this drug more accessible to people. I just wish it was a different drug. I wish that another study had shown that it does actually slow dementia, that they know exactly who is at risk for this side effect of the brain swelling and the brain bleeding. And at this point, they think they know, but they're not absolutely sure. And that scares me, right? Like, I need more certainty in the data before I change, if my dad was still alive, before I change my parent's life and he has to get these infusions all the time, and we're paying $56,000 out of pocket, not knowing if it's going to work, right? Because I'm sure you guys know this from your own experience, but like, even if you look at A receptor Namenda, those only work for certain people, unfortunately, right? And they haven't figured out, like, why does it work for this person and it doesn't work for this person? And so I was fortunate in that my dad, he actually responded really well to Aricept and Namenda, but after a few months, his body got used to it, and the dementia symptoms came back. So I do think it lessened them a little bit. But I know there are some people that these medications don't work, right? And so that can be the same case with this drug, and you're also $56,000, out of pocket every year. It just doesn't seem worth the risk to me right now. So I hope that's helpful in helping you kind of get your thoughts together and decide. But what I always say is, like, I'm just a guide for you, and your family makes the final decision. So I'm going to include a couple of links for sort of the for and the against this drug, and also the accounts that I follow on Instagram, my perspective on this. So thanks so much for joining me, and I hope you guys have a good evening. Bye.